Hello, it's Randi Rhodes. Here's a clip from our show, and go to randyrhodes.com for the whole thing and a podcast. Buy a stinking podcast.
Mary had a little man.
The fault. We believe that all men are created equal.
To the magnificent mosaic that is America.
From radio beacon to radio beacon. I have a dream today. Change has come to America.
Believe me.
Knock, knock. Who's there?
It's a figment of your imagination.
Randi Rhodes Show.
Turn up your mind.
Breaking news out here in Broward County, and I mean breaking. We just got this. Broward County now admits they submitted their recount numbers 2 minutes late, and thus, under the rules, the results apparently will not count. I want to tell you exactly what that means. The entire developments, the drama, the protests, the counting, everything that's been going on behind me the last few days, according to this breaking news tonight, that would be for nothing, because the state is going to use the original vote totals.
Oh, my God.
While this manual recount proceeds under state law. Can't make it up.
Oh! Can't make it up. Welcome to Florida. Boy, oh boy. You know, when they talked about the November 2018 election, did you think it would be all of November? I wasn't, although I did say we were going to have a contested election because it's Florida. There is just no way. There is no way. So here's where we're at now. This is so, first of all, let me show you the front page of the Palm Beach Post. This is a mullet wrapper, okay? This is, I don't know even why we get this newspaper, but at least the subscription will pay for itself today. Here. Can you see that? It's Governor DeSantis, everybody. We have a white supremacist as the governor in the old Confederacy in the state of Florida. What could go wrong? Did you understand what Ari there said? Did you understand the explanation? Because it was very succinct and it was really, to the point. So they spent all this time and all this effort, and it wasn't just Broward. See, that's the thing. It's Hillsborough County, too, which is on the West Coast, Palm Beach County, and Broward County all missed the deadlines for the machine recounts. In such a case, the original tally stands as if there was never a recount. Now, our Secretary of State, Ken Detzner, decided that the IT guy, I swear this is what it came down to, that the IT guy who was inputting the results of the machine recount in Broward County. Broward! Now, you know why I yell at them like that. In Broward County, missed the deadline for hitting send by 2 minutes. Swear to God, 120 seconds. And therefore, the Secretary of State refused to accept the recount numbers and went with the old numbers in a very Democratic county, Broward County. Broward! And decided that the old numbers are, the numbers. That's what it is. The old numbers are the numbers in the governor's race. The Senate race, in the original tally, was still so close. It was less than 2.25, okay? 2.5% different in the Senate race, and therefore our law, whatever's left of it, kicks in, and a manual recount is occurring right now, but only in the Senate race. So we have 11-hour days today. We have 11-hour days tomorrow. There will be 2 30-minute breaks each day. Can you imagine this? The table participant, you've got instructions here, right? And you've got, lawyers from the Republican Party, lawyers from the Democratic Party. You've got, observers, and you've got, table participants, and they're not allowed to leave. The table participant stays all day, the instructions say. And I told you yesterday, you think I'm crazy. I don't make this crap up. The rule for volunteers working the recount: no phones at the tables. All right. No pencils or pens. No food or beverages. No moisturizer. I'm not getting. Hands must be lotion and oil free in case of accidental contact with the ballots. And they're having a very hard time finding volunteers who are willing to go 11 hours without snacking or moisturizing. I'm telling you, this is Florida. You know, a federal judge said, and this is the quote, Florida has been the laughingstock of the world, election after election, yet we still chose not to fix it. You know who we are that chose not to fix it? The guy who wants to be the senator from Florida. That's who. Oh, great plan. What a good plan. Let's put Rick Scott, who refused to fix my right to have my ballot. You realize what I'm saying here. Me, personally, did not have my ballot counted. You understand that, right? I told you I stood in line for 2 hours, and I was so proud of my I voted sticker. Remember, I wore it all day on the Tuesday. I saved it because I voted early on a Sunday. Sunday, Elliot. I voted on Sunday. People waited here for hours to cast their ballot, only to find out, not going to count it. No. So I'll just say, you know, yes, Florida votes poorly, in that we're not good at running elections. But at least we don't vote wrong like a lot of states, you know? And only half of our state votes wrong. Or a few over half vote wrong, depending on who is counting the votes. So I guess it's better to vote in a state that only votes half Republican and can't count than from a state that gives a landslide victory to a dead pimp. I don't know. Although I shouldn't say that because Nevada did beautifully in this election. Very, very nice. Except for small little tiny desert towns where prostitution is legal or some such crap. I mean, you know, and but this is just so amazing. And apparently even the lawyers did not know what to say.
Absolutely stunning news we heard today. We had been sitting there. We had just gotten the news that they had made it. They were 15 minutes ahead of deadline. They were ready to go and submit these results. 2 hours later, they came back and said, actually, just kidding. We were 2 minutes late because the person who was in charge of submitting the results did not know how to work the website. So now the entire week's worth of counting and recounting is over.
So they had the numbers, and they say that the official in there who was actually just putting them up just hadn't had enough practice on the website.
Right. He said it was a user error. He didn't know how to work the website, and none of the results count.
What was the mood in there when that news broke?
Jaws dropped. That entire room was just stunned. Even the lawyers didn't know what to say.
That's because they're not great lawyers. You know what I would have said? I would have said, this is Florida. Being 2 minutes late in Florida is like being 2 days early in a normal place. It's Florida. Accept the results. It went on all day. They were 50. They had the totals. They just couldn't be transmitted by internets. But they had the totals. And why didn't they just pick up the phone? I don't understand this to say she's 15 minutes. This is Snipes, right? She's 15 minutes early. Pick up the phone, transmit the information, over the telephone, back it up with fax and web. I don't understand. I really don't understand. And so we had to go back to the original tallies, and the whole thing was for nothing over here. I mean, this is crazy. By the way, Georgia, we should know Georgia at 5 o'clock today. It's 4 o'clock Eastern time. I don't know if Stacey Abrams is going to bring just one final lawsuit or not. I will tell you that she needs 17,000 of 55,000 ballots. That's what she needs. There are 55,000 votes between the two, and Stacey Abrams needs to get 17,000 of the votes, that are left to be, scrutinized or provisionals that need to have signature, whatever it is. And that's the only possibility because that would throw them into a runoff on the 4th of December. I don't think she'll get there. They say that only hundreds of previously uncounted votes would be added today, Friday. And then at 5 o'clock, it seems like the Secretary of State, Robin Crittenden, will certify the results of the election. Now, she has one last option, and of course, it's legal action. And she would have to say, that she has heard from more than 17,000 voters who said that they were prevented from voting on election day. She says that her campaign has heard from 25,000 voters who have had problems casting their ballot. But I can't tell, and there's no press release telling me that of the 25,000 who said they had problems, how many were not allowed, to vote. And that's what she would have to prove. She would have to prove that even though she heard from 25,000 that had difficulty voting, which is a sin, it's a crime, it's just disgusting. But she would have to show that 17,000 voters were prevented from voting. And then if she thinks that she can present that to a court, then she will file a lawsuit. Now, of course, the other side, the camp, who is the Secretary of State, who did purge more voters in the state of Georgia than any other previous Secretary of State in the history of that state. So that's saying something, in the freaking Confederacy where we all vote, Mississippi is also, they're going into a runoff on the 27th. Oh, and by the way, did you hear your Cindy girl, little Cindy over there? Cindy Hyde, Jekyll or whatever her freaking name is? The one that was appointed to take Thad Cochran's seat because he was under the weather, not feeling fit. Remember that? And so she's running against Mike Espy, who was a House member, number one. Number two, he was a cabinet member. He was the agriculture secretary. And he has to have a runoff against this little girl who, was just handpicked by Governor Bryant in Mississippi. So, we told you the story about her racism, right? Where she told a cattle rancher that if he invited her to sit in the front row of a hanging, she'd be there with him, just sitting in the front row. So I actually found, it's very bad audio, but this is where she said it.
I would fight a circus song. He's invited me to a public hanging, I'd be on the front row.
If he invited me to a public hanging, I'd be on the front row. And of course, a train is going by on top of it. The audio, isn't that great? Oh, man, she's like, I don't know, protected by, the mighty hand of racism. And then there's another video of her saying, she's talking to a bunch of students, and they're saying things about, whether or not they should put voting precincts, polling places on school campuses. And she actually says, well, some of those schools are like a lot of liberals. So, restricting their right to vote, making it harder for them to vote. That's a great idea. Okay. Okay, I know that's impossible to hear. That's why, but it's got closed captioning. And here's what she says. She says, and then they remind me. And then they remind me that there's a lot of liberal folks in those other schools who that maybe we don't want to vote. Maybe we want to make it just a little more difficult. So I think that's a great idea. Mississippi, you have a runoff on the 27th of the November. It's coming. It's coming. Mike Espy. Neither one of them, I think they both got 41%. Don't be like Florida. Half of us vote wrong. Half of you vote wrong, too. But listen, the deep red states like Mississippi, the deep red is getting shallower and shallower and shallower. The good news is, the only Republican serving in the entire Northeast right now, I swear to God, there's only one Republican, and she was not on the ballot this time around. You know who that is? In the whole Northeast, they're all Democrats now. State legislators, governors. It's Susan Collins of Maine. She's the only one left. That's right.
all things Randi at RandiRhodes.com.
Go for launch.
Speaking truth to power, the Randi Rhodes Show.
So it is official. The Florida Senate race is now facing another recount, this time by hand. New numbers released by Florida Secretary of State show Republican Rick Scott leading Democratic Senator Bill Nelson by 12,603 votes, or 0.15%. That is within the legal margin for a hand recount. But 3 counties in the state failed to meet today's deadline for machine recounts. And I'm talking about Broward, Hillsborough, and Palm Beach counties. That means their initial tallies, their totals from last week, those totals will stand. Broward County was actually just 2 minutes late with the new recount totals, but the Secretary of State wouldn't accept the results. Just 2 minutes late. Yeah. What excuse is there for Broward County cutting it so close? Palm Beach County is blaming their 11-year-old voting machines. They apparently overheated, causing mismatched results and forcing staffers to redo their work. Susan Bucker, the supervisor of elections in the county, said that those faulty machines made meeting today's deadline impossible.
We gave it everything we had. I'm very proud of my team, and we are a good election office, and I have a great team. I think that we just got stuck with some mechanical issues that were inherited.
Mechanical issues? It's 2018.
Yeah, seriously.
And you're blaming mechanical issues? Really? That's embarrassing. It's even more embarrassing because this is not the first time that they've dealt with voting machine problems. Remember this? 18 years ago, Palm Beach County was home to the controversial butterfly ballot at the heart of the 2000 recount. Many voters said that they may have voted for the wrong candidate because they were confused. Palm Beach was also one of the counties where recounts were conducted using punch card ballots. Remember officials looking at partially punched ballots where they were dimple chads or hanging chads?
Pregnant
Remember
chads.
Why are there still issues? And Palm Beach County is not alone. Hillsborough County is blaming 2 power outages and lost a voting machine for a drop in votes counted. That's why they decided to stick with the initial numbers. This is unacceptable.
You think?
Get some new machines, ones that work, figure it out. Crucial Florida counties not meeting this deadline disenfranchises voters. It means that their votes were not counted.
That's right. That's what it means. My vote was not counted. That's exactly what it means. We had overheated machines. I swear to God, this is the thing. We have like coal-fired machines. Steam engines are propelling the machines. You know what I mean? It's like, Gutenberg invented our machines. It's so, and you want to know why it won't get fixed? And you want to know why 2020, listen, this is how it affects you. I know you think it's all about Florida and me. Oh, no. No. Florida has 29 electoral votes. It is nary impossible to win the presidency without Florida. Okay? And now, for the past 16 years, we have had Governor Jeb and Governor Scott. And Governor Scott is going to vacate the premises after this hand job that Palm Beach is going to give him. And he's going to go to the Senate and he's going to hand off to the white supremacist Ron DeSantis. If you think that Ron DeSantis, who's the guy who put up the child abuse video, remember his little baby he was reading to his little baby from the Art of the Deal? And he had his little baby in a onesie that said, "Make America Great Again," and a little red cappy on his head. Oh, it's child abuse. If you think Ron DeSantis is going to improve access or the way that we vote or anything like that ahead of 2020, when we know that Florida, when it's close, they can steal it, they can flip it, they can deny that the new count should be the count, even though, if it's only 2 seconds late or 2 minutes late, or even if they have no interest in fixing this place. And the United States of America, on the eve of 2020, you're all going to look at Florida, you're all going to forget that this happened in the midterms, and you're all going to say, How did Florida go for Trump? How did that happen? Because Ron DeSantis, did I show you the front page of our paper, is now the governor of this state, replacing Rick Scott, who replaced Jeb Bush. And that's 16 years of not fixing our systems. 16 years of complete and utter neglect. 16 years of having to forge parts for our voting machines. It's freaking the third decade in the 21st century. We can't have an election. We can't do it. I mean, this is just unbelievable. Okay, I got to say, now my hopes are pinned on, I know that Georgia is going to be closed in a half hour, and you will have, Governor Kemp, who rigged his election, who, the idea that there's voter fraud has been so roundly and soundly debunked, but the voter suppression efforts ever since Scalia, the Antonin Scalia School of Law, asshole, right? Ever since he said racism is over, that was 2013 for those of you who can't remember yesterday, it was 2013, and he said, well, the Confederacy doesn't have to notify the federal government if it practices, voter disenfranchisement, or if it closes polls, or if it changes the ballot, or if it doesn't use best practices at the ballot, or if it starts purging people, or if it doesn't give people notice that their signatures don't match and and they're not handwriting experts or anything like that. They could just toss hey, this one sounds like a black guy. It's like Johnson. Yeah, toss that one. Like that. They don't have to notify the feds anymore when they do this to us, okay? They don't. So Georgia, so my big hope now, can you imagine this? My big hope for the Confederacy is Mississippi. Get woke, Mississippi. You got 37% of you. Black women, please save us. I'm begging you. Please, 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 please. It was black women that saved us from Roy Moore. Truly it was. I am counting on black women. Black women in Mississippi, please, please, please put it on your calendar. I know that everybody, works really hard, and it's hard to get out for a Tuesday and then another Tuesday. Please, please save Mississippi. It's my only hope for the Confederacy. I look at the other places in this country where ballots are actually counted, and I see that the only Republican left in the entire Northeast, like Maine and New Hampshire and Vermont and New York and New Jersey and all it's all Democratic. The whole thing is blue. It's all, even freaking Orange County. Orange is the new blue. Thank you, Orange County. Thank you. Orange County voted. West Virginia voted for a Democratic senator. But it's the freaking Confederacy, man. It's the Confederacy. I can't. And we know there's no voter fraud. We know that. It has been debunked so roundly and soundly and repeatedly and over again. But this voter suppression thing, it's just endless. It's endless. So now I'm watching Utah. Can you believe this? I got high hopes in Mississippi and Utah. Florida's done. Florida is done. And 2020, this is what I'm telling you. It's going to look just like this. It's going to look just like this. On election night, 2020, you're all going to be sitting there, and Florida's going to be late, or Florida's going to come in around 10:30. Depends. Sometimes they don't call Florida till 3 in the morning when Fox News gets the honor, right? That's if Jeb's cousin works there. Yeah, if Jeb Bush's cousin works at Fox News at the, voting desk, well, then he can, not declare until 3 o'clock in the morning when everybody's given up. And then you wake up in the morning and you find out, oh, my God, he effing won, right? Like that. And then the court cases ensue. And, 36 days later, the Supreme Court will pick the president. Now, this hand count, oh, God, I can't get past it because my vote did not count. And I'm so tired of my vote not counting. And, I always think, well, it's important that I stay here in Florida. It's important because my vote actually matters here because, it's like half Republican, but I don't know. It's like a third Republican, 2/3 Democrat, but their votes count twice. Something like that. You know what I'm saying? It's like the rural areas. They count them. Bay County, you could vote by email. Think about that. They allowed a county to vote by email. Do you know how illegal that is? Oh, my God. It's just, wow. And there is no voter fraud. There is no voter fraud, despite what Lou Dobbs says.
Well, we're watching, millions of illegal immigrants cross our borders, and many of them voting in the past election. That's just a couple of weeks ago, and having an immense impact. If there are, as Yale and MIT say, 20 to 30 million illegal immigrants already in this country, you know what that means for the districts of the U.S. Congress and the influence that they're giving to, for example, the state of California, Illinois, New York. But New York has such an
the burden on our
migration,
economy.
it's not going to have much of.
Lou Dobbs. Oh, well, they're all voting illegally.
Normally, we have a voter participation problem in the United States, but this year's midterms saw record midterm turnout.
Yep.
With an estimated 115 ballots cast and nearly 50% participation. Wow. That's the good news. Mm-hmm. The bad news is that we're still struggling with basic process problems and accurately counting votes.
Yeah,
But President Trump believes the number one problem we face is voter fraud. Armed with a complete absence of evidence, it's a point he's hit over and over again. He cried voter fraud in 2016 before the election, declaring the system rigged and questioning whether he'd accept the results.
Yep.
Then he won. But he still kept talking about voter fraud as a way to explain why he'd lost the popular vote by a historic margin. His short-lived voter fraud panel was a flop, essentially deemed a fraud itself by one of its own commissioners. In this election, Trump was back at it again. But repeating a lie doesn't make it true.
No.
And so here, again, are the facts. Voter fraud is vanishingly rare in the United States. For example, a loyal professor tracked U.S. elections from 2000 to 2014 and found only 31 instances of voter fraud out of more than 1 billion votes cast.
Oh, my God.
The White House has often cited a Pew study from 2012 as evidence of voter fraud, but that study actually focused and found problems with voter registration records being accurate.
Right.
The kind of troubles that led the president's daughter, Tiffany, Steve Bannon, and the Treasury Secretary to be registered in multiple states, none of which, of course, demonstrate voter fraud. The Brennan Center colorfully concluded that you are more likely to be struck by lightning than commit voter fraud. On the other hand, voter suppression is a real problem. A CNN investigation found that, quote, hundreds of new restrictions in a majority of states have been introduced since 2011. There are partisan obstacles at every step. Sometimes we see candidates inadvertently slip, as Mississippi runoff, where Senator Hyde Smith was caught on tape saying laws that make it just a little bit harder for liberal college students to vote are, quote, a great idea. She says she was joking. But we are not powerless to improve the situation. In Maine, an innovative election reform that the two parties fought tooth and nail produced real results. Instant runoff voting allowed folks in Maine's 2nd district to list their second choice on the ballot, and the Democratic challenger unseated the Republican incumbent without a costly recount or runoff. Now, keep in mind there are still 11 major races where votes are still being counted.
Oh, my God. We still have 11. When they said there would be an election in November, I did not think that they meant all of November. Did you? Did you think? Well, I knew we'd have a contested election in Florida because, and I was worried about Georgia, obviously, because there was so much voter suppression ahead of Election Day that everybody knew Georgia was rigged. Everybody knew that Stacey Abrams had, registered voters and they wouldn't accept, those voters, the new people that she, registered that would make the difference for her. When we saw them attacking her voter registration efforts, and then when we saw them saying, oh, signatures don't match, and no, we're not handwriting specialists, but whatever, we're not going to, we knew Georgia was going to be, a terrible experience, just a disgusting, it was baked into the cake. Everybody knew it. Florida is Florida, so it's always baked into our cake. But honestly, if you think that you're not affected by our 29 electoral votes in a presidential electoral college, and knowing now that we have a white supremacist who is a Trump ass licker, who is our governor, if you think he's going to fix it ahead of 2020, you're out of your mind. You're out of your mind. And believe me, if Trump if it's close in Florida, which it will be, especially with these, steam-powered, coal-fired machines, West Virginia, we could probably employ everybody with all the metallurgic coal that we need to power our voting machines. I'm so angry I can't even tell you. But you'll see in 2020 when it's close, Donald Trump's going to say it was rigged. The governor of Florida, Ron DeSantis, will vouch for him. And if he doesn't prevail, he's not going to leave. He's not going to leave. And he's going to call out these white supremacists, these alt-right freaks, and they will take to the streets for him. It's a sick situation, and it's scary, and it's frightening, and it's just, when you have to hope that Utah and Mississippi are going to save you.
Speak to Randi. Call 561-270-3844.
561-270-3844. Orange County is a new blue. What we saw was a sweep of Southern California districts in favor of Democrats. I'm a vice chair of the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee.
Look at that.
We targeted all these districts in Southern California. We moved our entire Western Region office to Southern California, and you saw the amazing successes. Gil Cisneros just took the lead last night. He's also going to come in. We're going to have 6 new members from California who are Democrats.
And why did that happen, Congressman? What's changing in Orange County that the rest of the country can look at?
Well, it turns out that the Republican strategy of raising taxes on millions of Californians and then trying to sabotage their health care was not a winning strategy for the GOP. But in addition, Donald Trump has made everything about him these last 2 years. A large part of this election was a rebuke of the president. It was a rejection of his divisive, xenophobic, harmful policies. I hope Donald Trump learns his lesson from this election and changes course. That's what the overwhelming majority of American voters want.
It is, but we can't get our votes counted here. So congratulations to the rest of the country that had a blue tsunami. It wasn't a blue wave. It was a slow moving, slow roll. Slow your roll. But it happened. It actually happened. There was a blue tsunami in California. Orange freaking county is completely blue. The whole Southern California map is blue. The whole Northeast is blue. The whole Midwest is blue. Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Michigan, all blue. Everybody's blue except the dangling part of our country. Have a look-see at the shape of Florida. You see it all limp and just hanging there like that. We can't vote here. We can't vote. And I sat here and spit out a spleen, made commercials, the whole thing. Everybody get out and vote, get out and vote. 50% of eligible voters, nary 50%, showed up in a midterm election. It was historical. It was amazing. We did the best we've done in 40 years. But my personal vote doesn't count. And anybody that votes in the Confederacy, you're pretty much screwed is what it is. It's just so amazing that I actually feel like I live in Dixieland. Unbelievable. And we are literally fighting for things like freedom of the press now. We are literally fighting so that, reporters who have previously gotten hard passes to cover the White House can't be singled out because we have, an orange Shih Tzu who like barks at mirrors. Every time he sees his own reflection, he freaks out and he starts barking at Jim Acosta. And they took away his, finally the court did a temporary restraining order. Okay, this is a temporary ruling, which is why I am trying to explain to you that this First Amendment issue, freedom of the press thing, is not over. What this court, this Kelly dude, who is a Trump appointee, he's brand new. He's all brand new and shiny, okay? And this was like his first big thing, his first big case. This guy did not want to rule on freedom of the press. He just did not want to do it. And he hasn't. And that Sarah Sanders, she tweeted out another freaking lie. I'm telling you, this girl cannot help herself. She cannot help herself. She actually tweeted out, quote, "Today the court made clear." Now, this should send a chill up your spine as much as me telling you I can't vote in Florida. and that we have 29 electoral votes. This should scare you. I'm trying to scare you. It's not my usual, wheelhouse that, I like to be all hopey-changey. You know that. I'm usually the ultimate optimist, but on a day when they told me, oh, we can't count your vote, and so we're going to go back to the old count where, we only took the ballots we wanted. But Sarah Sanders, she actually sent out a tweet today, and she said, today the court made clear there is no absolute First Amendment right to access the White House. What the F? There's no absolute. That is not what the judge ruled. So that's why that's so disturbing. And the White House does say now they're going to make all these new rules. They're going to have all kinds of new rules about reporters and how it works and who gets in and who. Because what the court said was the Fifth Amendment portion. That's what he dwelled upon. This Judge Kelly actually decided that he would decide the Fifth Amendment due process claim. And he did say that Jim Acosta's Fifth Amendment right to due process was not respected and that it was breached. He said, because I found that it must be granted. Okay, well, let me start with the whole sentence so you don't come in the middle. He said, I want to emphasize the very limited nature of today's ruling. His ruling was to give Jim Acosta immediately his press pass because this was an emergency temporary restraining order against revoking his press pass. And he said, so I want to emphasize the very limited nature of today's ruling because I've found that it must be granted as to the due process claim. I haven't had to reach the plaintiff's First Amendment claim at all. At all. In which they allege that the government engaged in viewpoint or content discrimination. So I want to make very clear, I have not determined the First Amendment was violated here, saying that he had not determined what legal standard would apply to the claim. And he is not going to look at this 1966 case that I keep well, actually, this was a 1971 case. It was the 1966 reporter who was kicked out of the press pool, right, at the White House, came to court in 1971. It's Sherrill versus Knight. And he said this was relied on heavily by CNN's legal team. And so he said, I haven't decided that yet. What he did decide was that Kelly, that Acosta had a right to cure or respond to whatever complaint the White House had, and that his right to due process under the rules, which I told you he has a right to respond to any allegation that he's rude or respond to any allegation that he touched this girl in a inappropriate or hostile way, which did not happen. He just, she was reaching, grabbing at him, and he just put his hand, an open hand just up like that and said, pardon me, ma'am. So, he said, I do hold that plaintiffs have demonstrated a likelihood of success on their claim that adequate process was not provided to Mr. Acosta. He said, indeed, whatever this is really interesting, okay? He said, whatever process there is at the White House, he has no idea what it might be. And this is exactly what he wrote. He wrote, indeed, whatever process occurred within the government is still so shrouded in mystery that the government couldn't tell me at oral argument who made the decision to revoke Mr. Acosta's press pass. I mean, they couldn't even tell him who said to take his press pass away because it's the president. And if it's determined that the president is discriminating against reporters because he doesn't like what they ask him, then the president is in violation of the First Amendment and the Constitution. So anyway, he just said the ruling is only the beginning of the court proceedings. He said it's very narrow. He did not even consider Jim Acosta's First Amendment, right. He just said that if somebody was given a hard pass, meaning that the Secret Service had vetted them and all the rules about whether or not to be admitted into the Brady press briefing room at the White House were followed, and you gave a reporter a press pass, and it was customary and practice, and it was something he did every day. You can't just revoke it without saying why or letting him, defend himself. And that's all that so next week is when we'll find out about the First Amendment issues. But this judge left the door wide freaking open. And, he hasn't concluded anything. He just said, if at some point after restoring the hard pass, the government would like to move to vacate the restraining order on the grounds that it has fulfilled its due process obligations, then it may, of course, do so. And I will promptly address that. And then the remaining basis of the temporary restraining order. But he did say that the case that CNN was relying on, this Cheryl case, which is the name of the reporter, Cheryl, that, quote, once the White House opens up a portion of it to reporters for their use, some kind of First Amendment liberty interest protected by a due process right is created, and I simply have no choice but to apply that precedent here. So this guy did not rule on the First Amendment at all, and it's very complicated. And if you don't think it's complicated, let's throw in another name who might have a First Amendment right to publish stolen, hacked material, or might not. And that's Julian Assange. These are not easy questions. And nothing was decided on the question of his First Amendment right. This was a due process claim, and it was ordered that his pass be given back because his due process was so denied that even at oral arguments, freaking White House lawyers, I told you that idiot lawyer that said, well, Jim Acosta can cover the president simply by watching television. I couldn't believe James Burnham is our government attorney. Oh, my God. I couldn't believe that was his argument to the court. But the court asked whose decision was it? Who decided to revoke his pass? And all the lawyers just looked at you. I don't. A name? You want a name? The pressure of a name. The pressure of a name. Cinderella. We don't know.
Everybody, thanks for coming. I just want to say something very briefly, and that is I want to thank all of my colleagues in the press who supported us this week, and I want to thank the judge for the decision he made today. And let's go back to work. Thank you.
He seems so proud, and I want him to be proud because he did get his pass back, and he did go to the court to do it, and he had to go to the court to do it, which in and of itself is bizarro world. Because the only time that a reporter at the White House was denied entry after being granted entry was the Cheryl case, and they decided to say that he was, they feared for their lives, which was found to be completely made up. So that did not work. This was, the Nixon White House. This was, it's just, this is the kind of, environment that we're operating in now. But as far as the First Amendment, Sarah, you better I don't know what the president is going to California. He's going to paradise. 600 people are still missing. 66 people, I believe, are dead. And the president is now going to paradise. And the only good thing about that is when you see this president standing in the hellscape that is that town, at least it will look like his natural environment. And Sarah needs to be there too. Because if you think that at the end, all you got to do is say, oh, please forgive me for all my lies, and then I go to paradise, then I go to heaven, you are sorely mistaken. You will be judged. Dan in Massachusetts. May I help you, Dan? All right, then. Joyce in Oregon.
Hi, Randy.
Hi.
Love you, first-time caller.
Oh, wow.
I've been listening to you since 2006 when I moved to Oregon. First time I heard you, I was like, who is this woman?
Yeah, I know.
I've got to listen to her every day.
Yeah, I'm like Spanish. I grow on you. You know what I mean? It's like kudzu is what I am.
You tell the truth
I know.
every day.
Every day. And you know how you know? You know how you know who's telling you the truth and who's not? If somebody is telling you stuff and it never is right or it doesn't ever happen, that means not only are they a bad analyst, but that they didn't tell you the truth to begin with. So you have garbage facts in, garbage conclusions out.
Well, I listen to you and I do my homework. I read newspapers. I learned that from my mom every single day. And I just want to tell you.
This is a newspaper, everybody. This is what it actually looks like. It looks like this.
I'm an old person. I'm an old person. But I listen to you every day, and I swear to God, we got to do something about this guy in the White House.
Oh, it's not just the White House.
Guy,
Wait.
Oh, my God. It's freaking me out.
It should freak you out because, Florida, like I said, is going to be like a major thing in 2020. And we now have Rick DeSantis in charge of the entire voting apparatus.
Scary.
It is scary.
Very scary, Randy.
I know.
Well, I love you.
I love you.
Keep listening to you. All right. Bye.
Bye. Yes, Dan. Oh, Dan, how may I direct your call, Dan?
Hi.
Hi.
Hey.
Oh, hey.
Hi.
Hey.
Okay, a little mistake there. Okay, well, one thing that I don't really know where I'm going with this yet, but I was out walking my dog for about 20 minutes, and one of the things that occurred to me is that a 2-minute missing of the deadline is just weird.
Oh, please, tell me about it. 2 minutes, they wouldn't accept the results and went back to the original funky count, the one that was didn't read the ballots. The one where you had so many more ballots for governor than you did for the Senate race. Yeah, that seems normal, right? And then they had the numbers. We don't know what they were, but they have the numbers. They just couldn't transmit them by internets, and therefore, we're going to go back to the original count. Expect this in 2020. Know this. And so you know what the lesson is? Just so you know. Now, it's not that your vote doesn't count. It's that it cannot be close. You have to overwhelm them. If we had, instead of 50% turnout in this state, or 49, if we had 60, the results would be clear. You cannot let it be close with these people running elections, with loyalists and white supremacists and alt-righters, with fraudsters. Rick Scott, like I said, $1.7 billion in fines he had to pay for bilking Medicare, and he was CEO of this giant hospital chain down here. Now he's going to go to the Senate?
Is Assange finally facing charges?
Yeah, certainly it would seem that he is. And what this filing of these charges now allows basically is for an arrest warrant to arrest, to take Julian Assange, should he be released from this embassy, should he go free. Essentially, authorities in the UK now have the authority to arrest him. These documents obviously causing a lot of concern now within the Department of Justice, within the intelligence community and law enforcement. This quite clearly should not have been made public because this could hurt our chances, certainly the government's chances, the U.S. government's chances in trying to get Julian Assange to finally face these charges. So these documents that were filed had nothing to do with Julian Assange. They popped up last night on Twitter, and here's what some of them said, just to give you an idea of some of the other information that was contained in these documents. It says that the complaint, supporting affidavit, and arrest warrant, as well as the motion and the proposed order, would need to remain sealed until Assange is arrested in connection with the charges in the criminal complaint. And of course, that goes to the fact that the U.S. government does not want to hurt its chances to try and take Julian Assange into custody. Obviously, Julian Assange, his attorney reacting to this news, saying that the news that criminal charges have been apparently filed against Mr. Assange is even more troubling than the haphazard manner in which that information has been revealed. The government bringing criminal charges against someone for publishing truthful information is a dangerous path for democracy to take. And of course, Jim, this has been a concern for many who have followed this case, including people inside the government under the Obama administration. People at the Department of Justice at that time were hesitant to bring charges against Julian Assange for this very reason his attorney here says. But it seems at least that this Department of Justice, it seems, has finally brought charges against Julian Assange.
Wow. So everybody is on indictment watch. So if you don't know the full story here, what happened is really mysteriously, just, you know, it could be as simple as somebody copied and pasted the wrong portion of an affidavit, the wrong portion of an indictment to another indictment. So what happened was, in the Eastern District of Virginia, there was a case that had to do with some sexual predator, some child molester, some guy who was asking a 15-year-old girl to send naked pictures to him, et cetera, et cetera. And the court was, the indictment was being filed with the court. And the reporters for the Washington Post and for BuzzFeed and Politico, they've been camped out looking to see what gets filed and what, ahead of, during Mueller's quiet period during the election, which, by the way, is still going on because it's November and it's Florida. And so, okay. So this guy that was being indicted for this crime of trolling 15-year-olds, girls, his indictment was unsealed. And apparently in his indictment, somebody copied and pasted from Julian Assange's indictment. And Julian's indictment is supposed to be under seal. We don't even know how long there's been an indictment on Julian Assange. We have no idea. All we know is that portions of his indictment ended up attached to an inside of an unrelated cases indictment. It's just such a weird story. But now the press has it. And now people know that Julian Assange is going to be, that the United States would like to arrest Julian Assange and try him. But, because it's only a little tiny, teeny, tiny piece that was copied and pasted, and the rest of Julian's indictment is under seal, we have no idea what they're charging him with. Is it the Espionage Act? What is it? And so with this Jim Acosta non-decision on the First Amendment and now a Julian Assange case where the Obama administration decided not to try to prosecute Julian Assange because they thought it would have some First Amendment ramifications. They didn't want to leave a roadmap. They only wanted to go after whistleblowers and leakers in the Obama administration, people who outed Valerie Plame, in the Bush administration, that kind of thing. But they did go after the people who stole confidential or rather classified or secret material. We all know Chelsea Manning, who gave classified information about Afghanistan, about the wars, to Julian Assange. We know Chelsea Manning was prosecuted and she's in jail, but we never prosecuted Julian Assange, and that's because it's a sticky wicket with the First Amendment. The First Amendment is a complicated thing. Now, you could say, well, why does Julian Assange even get the benefit of the First Amendment? He's not an American citizen. Well, I'm so glad that your mind is active like that. It isn't that he gets constitutional protection being a citizen of, Sweden or, now a citizen of Ecuador, living in London in the Ecuadorian embassy. I believe they granted him citizenship in Ecuador, and he's living in the embassy, and they've put out complaints about him going, he doesn't clean up after his cat. I swear to God, he has a cat. And they're saying, Julian must clean his own bathroom. Julian must clean up after his cat. He has to empty the litter box and he must feed his cat. I swear to God. But if Ecuador cuts him loose because they find him to be a slob and they're done with him, and they release him or keep him out of the embassy, and he leaves Ecuadorian soil, which is really in the middle of London. You understand? He's in London. But the embassy is Ecuadorian soil, just like the Russian embassy in Turkey where Khashoggi was killed, right? That's Saudi soil, even though it was in Turkey. So the same rules apply here. So if Ecuador kicks him out of the embassy and he sets foot on British soil, the Brits can arrest him and extradite him to the United States. Well, once you indict him and he's here, the Constitution applies. It also applies to immigrants who make it here. Once you set foot on U.S. soil, the Constitution also applies to you. So that's why it doesn't matter where he's actually from or whose citizenship he actually holds now. What would matter is if he's charged in an American court, then all the constitutional rights that we all enjoy are afforded to him as well, right? So he would have First Amendment constitutional protections. The question for Julian Assange, the lawyers already tipped their hands saying, well, he just printed truthful information. So how can you, he's like a journalist. He's like a journalist. So there's going to be a lot of difficult questions. Is he a journalist? Does he run a free press? Is that what he was doing? Did he have an intent to harm or deprive Americans of some right that they had? Or was what he published a matter of public concern, or did it serve the public good? Now, you could argue that when Chelsea Manning released all the stuff about the war so that we could see that the wars were, bogus, or the warrantless wiretapping, or whatever it is that, these, transparency outfits claim to be, you could argue that there is the public good here has an interest in those documents, even though they were stolen, like the Pentagon Papers. So you would prosecute the person that violated, the classification, but you wouldn't prosecute the journalist. However, in this case, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, I would submit to you that the documents that Julian Assange released during the 2016 presidential election not only were stolen by a foreign adversary, but were of no concern to the public. Are you going to tell me that I needed to know, or that it was in the interest of the public good, that I now have Hillary Clinton campaign manager John Podesta's risotto recipe? You see what I mean? But I don't know what they're charging him with. If they charge him under the Espionage Act, that's one thing. I mean, there's a lot in the Espionage Act. I actually printed it out. The relevant provision of the Espionage Act is Section 793C, and it says, whoever having unauthorized possession of, access to, or control over any document, writing, code book, signal book, sketch, photograph, photographic negative, blueprint, plan, map, model, instrument, appliance, or note relating to the national defense, or information relating to the national defense, which information the possessor has reason to believe could be used to the injury of the United States or to the advantage of any foreign nation, willfully communicates, delivers, transmits, or causes to be communicated, delivered, or transmitted, or attempts to communicate, deliver, transmit, or cause to be communicated, delivered, or transmitted to any person not entitled to receive it, or willfully retains the same and fails to deliver it to the officer or employee of the United States entitled to receive it, is in violation of the Espionage Act. Now, it would be great if we knew what he was being charged with, but we don't. We don't. Now, I will tell you that there was an indictment of 2 lobbyists that worked for AIPAC, the American-Israeli PAC, and they facilitated the transmission of classified information to Israel. Their case fell apart without setting a clear precedent on how the First Amendment would protect unauthorized disclosure of national security information. If it does at all, we don't know. But I don't know what he's charged with. And so you can see the dilemma. You can see the difficulty in assessing whether or not it would be good precedent for journalists. It would be good precedent for a free press to even prosecute Julian Assange. No one knows the answer to that, and I certainly can't figure out what I would do because I don't know what he's charged with. But I would say that releasing stolen, hacked documents from a foreign adversary pertaining to a U.S. election, during the U.S. election, especially moments after the Access Hollywood tape is released, and after communications with Roger Stone and Jerome Corsi in order to affect the election, shows intent to cause harm, and no public interest was served.
I acknowledge that former Secretary of State Brian Kemp will be certified as the victor in the 2018 gubernatorial election. But to watch an elected official who claims to represent the people in this state baldly pin his hopes for election on the suppression of the people's democratic right to vote has been truly appalling. This is not a speech of concession. Because concession means to acknowledge an action is right, true, or proper. As a woman of conscience and faith, I cannot concede that. But my assessment is the law currently allows no further viable remedy.
Oh man, why is it when we can't vote the wrong person wins? Why is that? So that was Georgia over the weekend. Stacey Abrams, she pledged to work to fix the voting problems in Georgia, so nobody will be able to fix the elections in Georgia. Come to Florida too, Stacey. Come to Florida too, please. Thank you. Thank you. It's just a request from a voter whose vote did not count. You know, this is just an amazing thing. It's no wonder that, Republicans have no interest in fixing the voting and the counting. They've mastered the art of fixing the elections, and they do it in such a way that nobody can track it. It's just anyway. Here's the good news: Democrats have a real shot in winning a Senate seat in Mississippi, which is going to be a little like Democrats wanting to win a seat in Alabama, which means it's doable, totally doable. Mike Espy, please. Thank you. Thank you. And also, there is unbelievable news that slid right under the radar in Texas. Texas decided to get rid of almost every Republican judge, except for one who was hired to oversee, I think, the drug courts. But every other judge in Harris County, Texas, every other judge, 59 of them now, are all Republicans because Texas is one of those places where judges belong to a party. Now, what is so great about that? What's so great about that is that the GOP does fundraisers for Republican judges all the freaking time, right? So that the judge who gets the judgeship actually owes something to the GOP. And it turns out that those judges have stopped reading briefs and don't read motions. They just decide the spur of the moment, depending on who's standing in front of them, whether or not that person helped them to get to be the judge or didn't help them to get to be the judge. And they kind of rule like that there. That all comes to an end in at least Harris County, which is a big-ass county in Texas. So that was like an amazing thing. The Republican judge that was hired, yes, he was hired to oversee the drug court remains. That's what he's there for. But Harris County, all elected Republican judges, all voted out, leaving only Democrats on the bench in civil courts, criminal courts, family courts, juvenile courts, and probate courts. All 59 seats, all of them. And you know what's cool? 17 of the elected of the 59 black women, part of a group. They all work together to support each other and get elected. The other two members of the so-called Houston 19, They were already presiding over state district courts. They fell short. They were trying to get onto an appellate court, but they did not lose their district court seats. Now, that is amazing. Between these women, 220 years of experience are ready for public service in Harris County, Texas. And what's really crazy is that said, quote, a little more fairness, a little more impartiality, a little more equality is coming. Not everybody's happy about that. Lawyers who made $500,000 a year off of their relationship with a judge aren't going to see that anymore. This is pretty freaking amazing. Deidre Davis, she was elected to a civil court. She headed up this group of people that replaced all the Republicans. And she said that many civil judges who have held their benches for years have stopped reading pleadings and filings in cases and instead just make decisions on the spur of the moment when the litigants appear before them. Quote, the pleadings need to be read and reviewed if you're going to be fair and give an informed decision about what's going on. Oh, see, there's always something, an informed decision. Who needs that? You don't need an informed decision. You got the president of the United States declaring that he's going to, I don't know, issue an executive order and we'll have a great climate. You know, he'll just do an executive order that says, we must have a great climate. And the rake business, I'm sure you heard this in California, right? He was there over the weekend. He was in, a town called Paradise. He thought it was called Pleasure, right? When they corrected him, he said, yeah, whatever, pleasure. So, it doesn't. And then he said that he said that in Finland, which is near the Arctic Circle, Southern California, not so much, not really close to the Arctic Circle. But even this was a lie, and nobody has caught this, but I certainly did because it was so outrageous. President said that the president of Finland had told him that all you need to do is rake the forest. That's what you need. You need to rake the forest floor. You have to take care of the floor. And he said that the president of Finland had told him this, even though Finland is very close to the Arctic Circle. It has nothing to do with California or with Santa Ana winds or with El Niños or with anything. Nothing. But what was really interesting about it was the lie actually morphed, from before. Before he had said, before he went to Paradise, Pleasure in his mind, before he went to the hellscape, that is that town of what formerly was 26,000 people. Now we have 74 dead and about 1,000 missing. About 1,000 missing. This is amazing how much death there is. Okay, in Northern California, and then Malibu, they're just starting now to let people back in. But what does Malibu have to do with it? Nothing. But you know what? It wasn't even that. It was that he said it was the president of Finland, but before he had said it was some unnamed governor in the United States that told him all you need to do is rake the floor. Now, if that's, science be damned, and if all, he saw it on television. He did, right? So if all the sciencey people would just, stop being so sciencey and just sit and watch the tube, then they would understand we don't need all this damn science. All we need is rakes, see? All we need is rakes. And if he thinks that raking the forest floor is going to end climate change or stop the Santa Ana winds from blowing 70 miles an hour an ember, if he thinks that, then he should not build this wall, because he's going to need to organize caravans to rake the freaking floor of the forest. And imagine what it's going to do for our rake business. I mean, we can make 11 billion jobs. New jobs are coming, and there's all going to be, rake manufacturers. They're moving in. You see what's happening. You see what's happening, right? You see. Oh, my God. This was the sickest weekend. I mean, the air quality is so dangerous there. That people are wearing masks and doctors are on the television trying to tell people that it's got to be a certain kind of, it can't just be that, the throwaway. It's got to be the one that nothing permeates. And, other than that, stay indoors, don't breathe, don't go out. I mean, it's here.
For days now, residents of California have been living under a blanket of smoke. Air quality readings deemed very unhealthy, even hazardous, are plaguing major metropolitan areas like San Francisco, 170 miles south of the devastating Camp Fire. Wildfire smoke contains a mixture of thousands of compounds, chemicals, gases, and tiny particles that can be inhaled into the deepest parts of the lung.
Wonderful.
Complications from smoke exposure range from the mild, eye and respiratory irritation, to the more serious, bronchitis, asthma, and worsening of pre-existing heart and lung disease.
Groovy.
People with chronic heart and lung conditions, pregnant women, and the elderly are especially vulnerable. Children are also at risk, partly because they have smaller breathing passages that can be seriously compromised by even a little narrowing. But poor air quality impacts healthy people as well. Officials recommend residents pay attention to air quality reports. When air quality is poor, stay indoors as much as possible, with windows and doors closed. And when outside, avoid strenuous exercise. In terms of masks, it's only the right kind, called N95 or P100, properly fitted, that can provide some protection. And Rena, there are potential downsides. Masks can increase the work of breathing and might encourage people to do more outdoor activity, which, of course, can worsen exposure.
Well, Dick Cheney's finally right. The answer seems to be stay indoors and get some duct tape and Visqueen. If you feel like breathing anywhere in the state of California. Oh my God, this is just so unbelievable. So, and it kills you when you hear, little tiny babies and little tiny children have little tiny, bronchial tubes, and they can't. And the president is like rakes. It's all about rakes, is what it is.
You're watching from New York, or you're watching from Washington D.C., and you don't really see the gravity of it. I mean, as big as they look on the tube, you don't see what's going on until you come here. And what we saw at Pleasure, what a name right now. But what we just saw, we just left Pleasure.
Paradise.
Or Paradise. And what we just saw at Paradise is just, it's just not acceptable.
Okay, it's not acceptable. What are we going to do about it, Mr. President?
Does seeing this devastation, though, change your opinion at all on climate change, Mr. President?
No. I have a strong opinion. I want great climate. We're going to have that, and we're going to have forests that are very safe. Because we can't go through this every year. We go through this. So we're going to have safe forests, and that's happening as we speak.
We're going to have great climate. We're going to have safe forests. What is he going to go? He's going to go back to the White House, and he's going to put out an executive order, and he's going to declare that we have great climate and we have safe forests. I mean, this is a sick man, really. And the surprising thing, when he was corrected about the town that was literally wiped out, where 1,000 people are unaccounted for, 74 people are dead, and it's only 55% contained. You can't breathe the air in the, in the vicinity. And he didn't insist that the name of the town was actually Pleasure. So that's a good thing. At least he was willing to be corrected. And at least he was willing to get off this giant orange button, go there, and not watch it on the tube or listen to Fox and Friends talk about how it's, not a big deal, because they barely cover it. They don't even talk about it. When they said, paradise, everybody, all the reporters, paradise. Well, paradise. As if to say, you want to use the technical name? Okay, paradise. I think it's Pleasure, because I get to be a hero standing upon the pile. But when they talked about fire management and what to do...
You said you need to be changing in fire management. Should the state and local officials have been done?
No, we're going to work together with the federal government. No, state, local, and federal government. Federal government's going to work with the state and local, and we're going to help them with funding.
Funding?
And it's going to take a lot of funding, I will tell you.
Should they have done things differently before this point?
A lot of things have been learned. And they've been working very hard. And I think you're going to see something very spectacular over the next number of years.
Hey, California, you're about to see something really spectacular, but I think it's going to be duct tape and Visqueen and masked people walking around, the northern parts of California. Does this change your mind on climate change? No. We're gonna have that. We're gonna have great climate. We're going to have great climate, and we're going to have safe forests. Now, when we come back, I'm going to play you, the lie, the unbelievable lie. I don't know why nobody caught this, but, I am, after all, me. But he said that it was the president of Finland who told him about the raking and the need for the raking. And then, in another interview, he said it was some unnamed governor he doesn't want to name. Now, when he says unnamed, or when he says, some people are saying, or you hear people saying that, it's a lie. He saw it on television. And it was an easier thing to see it on television and say, that's what I'll say, than to actually study the solution.
All things Randi at RandiRhodes.com.
Go for launch.
Speaking truth to power, the Randi Rhodes Show.
And I know Gavin's committed, we're all committed, I'm committed to make sure that we get all of this cleaned out and protected. Got to take care of the floors, the floors of the forests. Very important. God. You look at other countries where they do it differently, and it's a whole different story. I was with the president of Finland, and he said, we have a much different, we're a forest nation. He called it a forest nation. And they spend a lot of time on raking and cleaning and doing things, and they don't have any problem. And when it is, it's a very small problem. So I know everybody's looking at that, to that end, and it's going to work out. It's going to work out well.
If he wants enough landscapers to rake the forests of the United States, I'm just thinking he shouldn't build a wall. It's just, in fact, I think he's going to have to organize some caravan. But think about what it's going to do for our rake industry, since the president of Finland gave him this inside secret about the forest nation and what you need to do near the Arctic Circle, But then, before he went to California, he actually put in the can an interview with Chris Wallace. And when he was sitting and talking to Chris Wallace before he went to, and how did Jerry Brown and Gavin Newsom stand with the president and just keep a straight face? I have no earthly idea. I mean, it's not a giggling situation. This is death, destruction. It's a hellscape out there. But I don't know how they didn't do a spit take. When he's president of Finland told me, got to rake the floors, got to take care of the floors. But when he sat down with Chris Wallace, he did this before Sunday. He did this on Friday, and he told Chris Wallace some unnamed state governor told him about the raking of the floors being the secret science.
I was watching the firemen the other day.
He was watching
and
the TV.
And they were raking areas. They were raking areas where the fire was right over there, and they're raking trees, little trees like this that are not trees, little bushes that you could see are totally dry. Weeds. And they're raking them. They're on fire. That should have been all raked out.
What about the argument?
You wouldn't have the fires.
What about the argument it's climate change, that it's drier, it's hotter, and that's contributing to it?
Maybe it contributes a little bit. The big problem we have is management. When I was in a certain state, I won't say which, the governor said, we've tested it. We clean out areas, and we actually set the fire just to see. We lose almost nothing. We can put it out right away. And then we leave areas unmaintained. He said, we'll lose 100,000 acres before you even know it. You need forest management. It has to be. I'm not saying that in a negative way, a positive. I'm just saying the facts.
It was a governor in an unnamed state. Actually, it was him watching the TV. And he saw firemen raking burning bushes. I'm surprised you didn't have a Moses reference. I really, you know what goes on here. He sees something on TV, or he asks somebody a question to a complicated problem, and they tell him like a little smidge, a little something, and he just imbibes that, and then he talks like he's an expert on the topic. You know a lot of people that do that. That is so obnoxious. It's like, and what do they say? That somebody who has a little bit of information is a dangerous, dangerous freak. And that is what this president is. So here's a note to scientists everywhere. Get out of the lab and sit in front of the television and watch the firemen rake in unnamed states with unnamed governors standing by, or go to Finland and learn about the Arctic Circle's management of forests, and then just say something that would lead somebody to think maybe you knew a little something about a forest, and you don't. You don't. This man grew up in freaking concrete, okay? He's a concrete man now. This guy grew up in New York and City. Okay, he grew up in the same place I did. He has no freaking earthly idea about forest management. He has no earthly idea what they do in Finland. He doesn't know what they do in any other state where there are forests. He doesn't know one thing about anything to do with climate change. And his advice to all the sciencey people who have concluded that climate change is here, that things are burning because it's hotter, winds are stronger, moisture is greater, causing flooding, etc., and all of these things are getting much more extreme. No. We're going to have great climate, and we're going to rake. We're going to rake a floor. This was so sick. I mean, it's just so sad because so many people are missing. So many people are dead. Fires are only 55% contained. The campfire. Woolsey is in a little bit better. That's down in Malibu, for God's sake. He knows nothing.
It's been more than 10 days since this devastating fire devastated this community of 27,000 people. This morning, so many still locked in a constant struggle, searching for their loved ones, while crews are constantly sifting through wreckage all over town. It looks just like this. In paradise, more heartbreak.
Pleasure.
We have nothing left. We have nowhere to go. No one knows what to do. We're all living minute by minute out here.
Search crews still digging for any sign of nearly 1,000 residents listed missing. A painfully slow process that gets more difficult with each passing day. Rain is forecast later this week, which raises the possibility of mudslides and makes searches even more difficult, though it could help contain the fire.
We'll get through it because we're going to get through it together.
So many still desperately hoping to find friends and family.
You have reached the voicemail box.
That's all I get.
530.
Let us know you're okay, buddy.
Meanwhile, in the southern part of the state, the Woolsey fire is expected to be fully contained by Thanksgiving, but that's only after rain is in the forecast, opening up this entire state burn-scarred to the possibility of those devastating mudslides.
You can't win. You can't freaking win. First you had like a mass shooting, and then fires broke out, and now you're going to have mudslides if it rains. And you know what Trump's solution to it's going to be? We need to manufacture more pails and shovels. Everybody, should donate at the beach to the Californians so that they could have pails and shovels to dig out from the mud. I mean, this is just, and you ask them about climate? No. We're going to have great climate. We're going to have great climate. Air quality is so dangerous, so you need to wear a mask. No, I'm going to write an executive order. You'll be able to breathe tomorrow. We'll solve it quickly, and we'll solve it. It's going to be spectacular, and wait till you see. You'll see it's going to be spectacular. We're going to have a great solution. We're going to have forests that are very safe. We're going to have... This is, we're at a critical point here. This is critical mass. Either, people start doing things differently, including infrastructure, including fire retardant, and including, fire breaks, and maybe even, artificial grasses that are flame retardant. I don't know, but neither does this president. But he's standing there oh no, you'll see, it's going to be spectacular. Wait, you're going to see, it's going to be so good. Because I was watching TV and I was seeing them, burn bushes. And then some unnamed governor from some unnamed state who then turned into the president of Finland. This man is such a gaslighter. He is so dangerous. Dangerous. What you don't want in a fire situation is gaslights. Okay? You don't. And this man is doing that. He's making people crazy. He's making people nuts. And, I'm looking at whether or not these Trump voters are better off now that Trump's been president for 2 years. It's kind of like asking if opiate addicts are better off on opioids than they are without them, because, it's kind of like they're the same people. They both live in dream fantasy worlds, and their reality just crumbles around them. And then they harm everybody around them. They break everybody around them's hearts, and so if you sit there and you say, are they better off than opioid addicts? You say no, because, and it doesn't really matter, because the answer to that question isn't going to do a damn thing to change their minds. But the truth is, no. Trump counties are in worse shape than they were 2 years ago. Worse shape. And we've just had an election, and we can't count votes, and the machines are disgustingly bad, and there's no incentive to fix it because they've figured out how to rig it. You got lawsuits, about whether or not Whitaker is qualified. If Whitaker needs Senate confirmation to be the Attorney General of the United States, and it's just everything is so off kilter, everything is so out. It's just so. You can't vote. There's, we got a question about a free press now with Jim Acosta. They're sitting somewhere in the executive branch. They're going to write arbitrary rules, and you got to wear a certain outfit, and what days of the week the girls can come, and what days of the week the boys can come to the press room. I mean, it's just. And asked to grade his presidency over the weekend, he said, I would give myself an A+. And then he said, is that enough? I can go higher than that. Please don't tell me you don't know the alphabet. Please don't tell me you don't know the first letter of the alphabet. Please, please, please don't tell me that. This was an off the hook interview he gave to, and this is all he does now. Okay, he's going to do 2 more rallies. I just want you to know, right after Thanksgiving, because that Mississippi election is going to a runoff on the 27th. Please, Mississippi, do not forget, you have an election on the 27th of November, right after Thanksgiving, the Tuesday after Thanksgiving. And I know a lot of people are going to forget to vote, or a lot of people are going to, just say, oh, I didn't realize it was that day. Or please, if you know somebody in Mississippi, or if you are in Mississippi, start calling or talking to your neighbors, or, make sure souls to the polls, something, vote, get everybody on a Tuesday to go vote, because this thing is off the hook. And he's going down there because all he knows how to do is hold freaking rallies. Now, they didn't do him any good in West Virginia. They didn't do him any good in Montana. Okay, they didn't do him any good in lots of places. But he's gonna do 2 rallies on the 26th in one day. 2 rallies. He's going to Tupelo and he's going to Biloxi on the 26th to rally people for the Cindy Hyde-Smith woman who said that if you had a public hanging, she'd sit with you in the front row, and also said it's not such a good idea to put voting, polling places inside college campuses because some of those schools are liberal and we're better off when they don't vote. Now, 32% of the population, or 37% of the population of Mississippi is African Americans. You really want to continue to live in a world where white, elite, privileged, appointed people sit there and disrespect you on the television, and it's okay? It's the 3rd decade of the 21st century. Please get rid of this. Purge it from your system. You got a great candidate, Mike Espy. He worked in the Clinton cabinet. He was agriculture secretary. I think he might know a little something about the management of the land. Agriculture secretary, and he was also a House member, and I don't know who this woman is. I don't really care. All I know is that she is a racist. Nobody's ever heard the colloquialism that if there was a public hanging, I'd sit in the front row with you. It's just what came top of mind when she was campaigning, and the idea of voter suppression just comes top of mind, spewing out of her mouth. I'm not going to play. I have the videos, but there's the audio so bad. You could look it up, and this. This is so here we are in a world where we're denying science, check. We have uber nationalism with the Trumpanzees. The president says he's a nationalist. You have death and destruction everywhere, and the president refuses to mitigate it or refuses to, give people comfort and aid. I mean, Puerto Rico. He doesn't want to pay another nickel for Puerto Rico to recover from Maria. He doesn't want another nickel. California, he just said, oh, I'll give you some funds, but we're going to have great safe forests, and you won't believe it's spectacular what you're about to see. You're about to see something, I don't know what. The man is just a con artist. He is dangerous. He is ridiculous. He is wrong, okay? First he tells everybody he saw it on TV, you need to rake the floor. Then it was an unnamed governor from an unnamed state who told him you have to rake the floor. Then all of a sudden, the lie was the president of Finland, who, by the way, today said, I never spoke to Donald Trump about raking forests. Okay, it just never really came up. Then he downshifts in the Chris Wallace interview to trashing the military again. Now, you think about this. Right, and it's all because he is a demagogue, right? He trashes the military again. He trashed McCain's service. He likes people that don't get captured, which was an insult to anybody who was held against their will by a foreign enemy at any point, or fought in hostile territory under fear that they'd be captured, or went missing in action. All these families, and then Kaiser Khan, he insulted him because Kaiser Khan went to the Democratic National Convention, and so therefore his son's service, also his last name was Khan, that wasn't Aryan enough for Donald Trump to give any respect to this soldier who gave the final and ultimate sacrifice for his country. He didn't go to the cemetery on Veterans Day. Now he says, oh, I should go. And, subsequently, maybe I will. Maybe I will. Oh, my God. I mean, this man is just unbelievable. And then he trashes retired Admiral William McRaven because he didn't get Osama bin Laden fast enough. And also, he's a Hillary supporter. He's an Obama supporter, therefore his service is a pile of dew.
Bill McRaven, retired admiral, Navy SEAL, 37 years, former head of U.S. Special Operations.
Hillary Clinton fan.
Special Operations.
Excuse me, Hillary Clinton fan.
Who led the operations, commanded the operations that took down Saddam Hussein and that killed Osama bin Laden, says that your sentiment is the greatest threat to democracy in his lifetime.
He's a Hillary Clinton backer. And an Obama backer. And frankly,
he was a Navy SEAL.
Wouldn't it have been nice if we got Osama bin Laden a lot sooner than that? Wouldn't it have been nice? Think of this. Living in Pakistan, beautifully in Pakistan, in what I guess they considered a nice mansion. I don't know, I've seen nicer. But living in Pakistan, right next to the military academy, everybody in Pakistan knew he was there. And we give Pakistan $1.3 billion a year. And they don't tell him. They don't tell him.
You're not even going to give them credit for taking down bin Laden?
They took him down, but look. There's news right there. He lived in Pakistan. We're supporting Pakistan. We're giving them $1.3 billion a year, which we don't give them anymore, by the way. I ended it. Because they don't do anything for us. They don't do a damn thing for us. I'm totally in favor of the media. I'm totally in favor of free press. It's got to be fair press. When it's fake.
But the president get to decide what's fair and what's not.
I can tell what's fair and not. And so can my people, and so can a lot of other people.
I understand that, but
when you do something very good and they write it badly, and this is consistently, when you, as an example, rarely do they talk about...
Barack Obama whined about Fox News all the time, but he never said we were the enemy of the people.
Well, no, he didn't talk about the news. He didn't talk about anything. I'm only saying it very differently than anyone's ever said it before. I'm saying fake news, false reporting, dishonest reporting, of which there is a lot, and I know it. See, I know it because I'm a subject of it. A lot of people don't know it, but when I explain it to them, they understand it. And Chris, you know that better than you don't have to sit here and act like a perfect little, wonderful, innocent angel. I know you too well. I knew your father too well. That's not your gene. But let me tell you,
I think some of the coverage of you, sir, and I've said it on the record, is biased. But I don't think that
most of it is biased.
There is so much there in that one little clip that it blows your mind because he is incapable of telling the truth. But he attacked Admiral Bill McRaven because he didn't think that he got Osama bin Laden soon enough. And that Osama bin Laden was living beautifully in Pakistan, I guess what they considered a nice mansion. I don't know. I've seen nicer. Yeah, I remember he was sitting on the floor on a mat watching a 13-inch black and white TV, right? No gold leaf, no paintings of Trump, so I'm sure he's seen it. But he attacks Bill McRaven, the man who led the raid that got bin Laden, because Donald Trump can't chew gum and walk all over the military at the same time.
Call in, connect. To speak to Randi, call 561-270-3844. 561-270-3844.
McRaven is now responding to the president's latest comments. He tells CNN, quote, I did not back Hillary Clinton or anyone else. I am a fan of President Obama and President George W. Bush, both of whom I worked for. I admire all presidents, regardless of their political party, who uphold the dignity of the office and who use that office to bring the nation together in challenging times. I stand by my comment that the president's attack on the media is the greatest threat to our democracy in my lifetime. When you undermine the people's right to a free press and freedom of speech and expression, then you threaten the Constitution and all for which it stands. CNN's Boris Sanchez is at the White House for us tonight. Boris, defenders are going to say the president is simply hitting back, but this isn't the first time the president has had a controversy with a military member.
That's right, Anna. The president consistently fighting back on any criticism, whether coming from a member of the military or even military families. It's something that his supporters enjoy thoroughly, that the president fights back whenever he feels he's been attacked, though it's led to a number of awkward moments with military members and their families. Here's this list. You'll recall back in 2016, the president drew criticism, or I should say 2015, he drew criticism when he said that Senator John McCain wasn't a war hero because he was trapped by the Vietnamese. Then you'll recall that in 2016, during the presidential campaign, he attacked the Khan family, that Gold Star family, which spoke out at the Democratic National Convention. He also had a spat with a Gold Star family as president, the family of Sergeant LaDavid Johnson, who disputed some of what President Trump said that he talked about with Johnson's widow in a phone call. We should also point out President Trump has never actually visited troops in war zones, something that he was criticized for this week. He's promised he will do that, but it is notable that the president hasn't done so yet. It's considered one of the basic requirements for being commander-in-chief. And this week, the president also drew criticism because he didn't visit Arlington National Cemetery on Veterans Day. The president told Fox News that is something he regrets. Listen to this.
I should have done that. I was extremely busy on calls for the country. We did a lot of calling, as you know.
But this is Veterans Day.
I probably, in retrospect, I should have, and I did last year, and I will virtually every year. But we had come in very late at night, and I had just left literally the American Cemetery in Paris, and I really probably assumed that was fine. And I was extremely busy because of affairs of state, doing other things.
He's a jackass.
He is a jackass. He's an absolute jackass. A lifetime of service. William McRaven gave 37 years of his life to service to this country. And he can be denigrated as being, his service wasn't good service because the president wants to believe that McRaven didn't get Osama bin Laden fast enough and that he is a Hillary Clinton supporter or a Barack Obama supporter. Now, McRaven has done a couple of things, okay? He responded and he said, I did not back Hillary Clinton or anyone else. I am a fan of President Obama and President George W. Bush, both of whom I worked for. I admire all presidents, regardless of their political party, who uphold the dignity of the office and who use that office to bring the nation together in challenging times. I stand by my comment that the president's attack on the media is the greatest threat to our democracy in my lifetime. When you undermine the people's right to a free press and freedom of speech and expression, then you threaten the Constitution and all for which it stands. Now, McRaven has said this repeatedly in public. He said this at a college commencement address, and it was a journalism school, and he was telling these students, don't be disheartened. Don't lose. You have got to do everything you can do to speak truth to power in this country. It is a check. It is something in the Constitution. It is in the First Amendment. And that is what we fight for. And that is why you need to do everything that you want to do as a journalist and cover people in authority and hold them to account.
On February 17th, the president said the news media is the enemy of the American people. The news media is the enemy of the American people. This sentiment may be the greatest threat to democracy in my lifetime. This sentiment. And I will tell you as journalism majors, as Americans, you should challenge that sentiment and that statement every opportunity you can.
So that was Admiral McRaven talking to Moody College of Communication. These were a bunch of journalism students. And then you might recall that William McRaven wrote a very brief op-ed in the Washington Post where he talked about, first of all, 37 years of service to the country, okay, retired Navy admiral. Here's another thing you may or may not know about him. He has leukemia. William McRaven is literally fighting blood cancer at this very moment. And he actually, served as the Joint Special Operations Commander from 2011 to 2014. In 2011, that's when the Navy SEAL raid happened in Pakistan, and that killed Osama bin Laden. Okay, he also captured, found and coordinated the capture of Saddam Hussein, who we found, in a farm someplace in a hole. Remember that? Yeah, that's McRaven. And, the President of the United States has decided that he's a better commander. He knows more than the generals. Maybe you'll remember that when Syria used gas against its own people, we lobbed a couple of Tomahawk missiles at a freaking airport that was operational the next day. Remember that one? Maybe you'll remember that just 5 days after the president became the president, he was sitting and he was having dinner with Jared, his top advisor, Jared Kushner and Steve Bannon and Flynn, who has since pled guilty. And he decided to order a bombing of Yemen. Do you remember the bombing of Yemen? I mean, I hate to make you remember 2 years ago, but this is your commander-in-chief. He decided to go ahead with an operation that the SEALs told President Obama not to go ahead with in Yemen because you needed a moonless night so no one would see our SEALs. And Trump decided he knew more than the generals, which he has said, and he decided to greenlight it with the advice of Jared Kushner, that military magician. He's just so... Who wouldn't want to fight for Jared Kushner as your, commander-in-chief? Who wouldn't want Steve Bannon to be calling the shots on military operations? And Flynn. But everything that could go wrong with that Yemen mission did go wrong. You remember that? Chief Petty Officer William Owens, he died, he was killed. And, of course, they knew that they shouldn't go ahead with this raid because somebody tipped off the rebels in Yemen that the SEALs were coming. And the SEALs knew they were screwed before they even started. They knew that there was a communications intercept. And the commandos in this unit knew that the mission was somehow compromised, but Trump ordered it anyway, and they pressed on. And they were flown into the area. An Osprey crashed, had to be destroyed by a missile so that we didn't leave any of our technology behind. They had lost the element of surprise. They came under fire for almost an hour. We lost the chief petty officer. Civilians were killed in this mess. Some children were killed. You remember an 8-year-old daughter of Anwar al-Awlaki was killed. Now, he's dead. He was an al-Qaeda guy, but he died a long time ago. We killed him. But now his 8-year-old daughter, this was his first counterterrorism operation. The second, wartime thing he did was, lob some tow missiles into Syria after they gassed their own people. Now you've got the Saudis who probably tipped off the Yemen rebels. You got the Saudis who are saying, well, Khashoggi. So, I mean, it's awful. And the president of the United States will not hold the Saudis accountable for the death of a journalist who lived in Virginia. I mean, this whole thing it's so unbelievably obvious that this president doesn't give a damn about anything that Americans who vote for him say they care about. We love our troops. We support the troops. Support the troops. You don't love our troops. The president trashes them every chance you get. You had 82,000 still not getting their housing payments. The VA, he lies about it every rally he goes to. He says, and we got Veterans Choice. You know when Veterans Choice was passed? Somebody please Google it in the MAGA movement or whatever it is. Because that movement stinks, man. Worse than, a Sunday morning movement, really. Veterans' Choice was passed in 2014 under a different president, the one who got Osama bin Laden. This is just so unbelievable. So McRaven wrote this very brief op-ed back in August, okay? After John Brennan's security clearance was revoked because the president didn't like him. Same thing with Jim Acosta because the president doesn't like him. And so McRaven wrote this op-ed about a free press. And he said, former CIA Director John Brennan, whose security clearance you revoked on Wednesday, is one of the finest public servants I have ever known. Few Americans have done more to protect this country than John. He is a man of unparalleled integrity whose honesty and character have never been in question, except by those who don't know him. Therefore, I would consider it an honor if you would revoke my security clearance as well, so I can add my name to the list of men and women who have spoken up against your presidency. Like most Americans, I had hoped that when you became president, you would rise to the occasion and become the leader this great nation needs. A good leader tries to embody the best qualities of his or her organization. A good leader sets the example for others to follow. A good leader always puts the welfare of others before himself or herself. Your leadership, however, has shown very little of these qualities. Through your actions, you have embarrassed us in the eyes of our children, humiliated us on the world stage, and worst of all, divided us as a nation. If you think for a moment that your McCarthy-era tactics will suppress the voices of criticism, you are sadly mistaken. The criticism will continue until you become the leader we prayed you would be. And that's why he's attacking McRaven. And when you look at, the prowess of the decision-making in the military arena that this president has made, knowing that the element of surprise was lost in Yemen, knowing that the Syrians gassed their own people, knowing that, TOW missiles would do absolutely nothing, knowing that, the Yemen operation was doomed before it began, and he ordered it anyway, on the advice of these really, really supreme military commanders, Steve Bannon and Jared Kushner. You got to understand, we're in a bad place. We're in a seriously bad place. We can't vote. He's trashing the military. He only likes, people that bow to him. He is a king. And everybody's reputation, no matter how much service, can be trashed.
Mary had a little man. The fault. We believe that all men are created equal.
To the magnificent mosaic that is America.
From radio beacon to radio beacon.
I have a dream today.
Change has come to America.
Believe me. Knock, knock. Who's there?
It's a figment of your imagination.
Randi Rhodes Show.
Turn up your mind.
Let's get to the bigger issue. In 2017, last year, you tweeted this, and I want to quote it accurately. The fake news media is not my enemy. It is the enemy of the American people.
It's true, 100%. Not the media. I'm glad you're finally quoting it correctly, because they like to leave the fake news.
Okay,
out.
but that's what you said.
Well, fake news. So
but
the people that are supporting me in particular, they're very smart people. They're hardworking, brilliant, great people. They know when the news is fake. And they get angry when they see all of the fakeness. Frankly, the networks.
There have been people who've been critical of other presidents. No president has liked his press coverage. John Kennedy, in your Oval Office, canceled the subscription to the New York Herald Tribune. Nobody called it the enemy of the American people.
Chris, I'm calling the fake news is the enemy. It's fake. It's phony.
But a
They'll
lot
take
of times,
something
sir,
good.
it's just news you don't
No,
like.
it's not. No. I don't mind getting bad news if I'm wrong. If I do something wrong, like, for instance, the cemetery, I was not allowed to go because of the Secret Service.
Oh, my God.
Because they expected to take a helicopter.
Okay.
They had zero visibility. They said, sir, we are totally unequipped for you to go. In addition to that, the cemetery was far too far away from Air Force One, which is sort of like a control center where you had to be near. Not one paper that I saw wrote it that way. They said I stayed out of it because of the rain. And yet, the following day, I made a speech at the American Cemetery. It was pouring. It wasn't even really raining the first day, but the fog was tremendous, okay?
But, sir, leaders in authoritarian countries like Russia, China, Venezuela,
Saudi Arabia,
now repress the media using your words.
I can't talk for other people. I can only talk for me. I will tell you.
But you're seen around the world as a beacon for repression, not
Chris,
for...
I'm not talking about you, but you sometimes maybe, but I'm not talking about you. The news about me is largely phony. It's false.
It's true. The reason why he could have gone to the cemetery if he wanted to go, General Dunford went, he got in a car and he drove, and it was 50 miles away, which is kind of the distance between where I am and Fort Lauderdale. Okay, you understand that? Some people do that for a doctor's appointment. So it just makes no sense. He's just sitting there lying. And Chris Wallace is trying to show that this president is organizing the most hateful elements of various governments around the world to suppress the media. Didn't bring up Saudi Arabia, where Khashoggi was killed. Now, why was Khashoggi killed? Khashoggi was killed by the Saudis because they didn't think he was loyal enough to the Crown Prince. The Crown Prince is lying and saying he didn't order Khashoggi to be killed. Now, the first story they told about Khashoggi was that he left. He left that consulate. And they said, well, then where's the video of him leaving? They showed video. It was a stand-in. It was a double. It wasn't Khashoggi. It was an actor. They sent 15 people. One had a bone saw, for God's sake. The CIA, Gina Haspel, the new CIA director, has said, for sure, without a doubt in her mind, Khashoggi was killed by the Saudi prince on his order in the consulate. And the president won't do anything because whatever it is, I mean, the Saudis are supportive of him. Ivanka went there. She had a lovely 2 days. He's got a hotel in Dubai. And, nothing's going to disturb his business, not even the killing of a journalist. And then he sits there and he's, I'm so glad you said, fake news is the enemy of the people. Meanwhile, in that tweet, if you noticed, it said ABC, CBS, CNN, NBC. All of and the failing New York Times was also included in that tweet. And he called them all fake news for reporting that General Dunford managed to get to the cemetery and he didn't show up on Veterans Day here. And he said, well, I should have, but I was doing affairs of the state. This man has nothing on his schedule. Do you remember on Veterans Day? Because I do, because I was livid. At 10:03 in the morning on Veterans Day, the president's schedule was made public, and it had nothing on it. Nothing. All he knows how to do is rallies, and all he knows how to do is lie, and all he knows how to do is stand there and tell his people that he takes credit for what other people did, and he knows more than generals, and then he does two military things. They both, they were both tragic. One just cost us, $1 billion, and the other one, we had dead people, and the element of surprise was lost, and he ordered it to go ahead on the brilliant military advice of Steve Bannon and Jared Kushner. I mean, this guy is disgusting and dangerous. They asked him about Khashoggi, or Chris Wallace did.
Turkish President Erdogan says that he has shared a tape with the U.S. and other countries that is of the killing of Jamal Khashoggi inside the Saudi consulate in Istanbul. Have you, one, either heard the tape yourself or been briefed on it? And if so, to your mind, what does it show?
We have the tape. I don't want to hear the tape. No reason for me to hear the tape.
Why don't you,
but I've been
why don't
fully
you want to hear it, sir?
Because it's a suffering tape. It's a terrible tape. I've been fully briefed on it. There's no reason for me to hear it. In fact, I said to the people, should I? They said, you really shouldn't. There's no reason. I know everything that went on in the tape without having to.
And what happened?
It was very violent, very vicious, and terrible.
A month ago, you said you had spoken with Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman and that he had told you directly that he had no knowledge of this.
That's right. And still says that.
But we now know that some of the people closest to him, some of his closest advisors were part of this. Question, did MBS lie to you, sir?
I don't know. You know, who can really know? But I can say this. He's got many people now that say he had no knowledge.
What if the Crown Prince, speaking to you, the President of the United States, directly lied to you about
Well, he told me that he had nothing to do with it. He told me that, I would say, maybe 5 times at different points.
So what if he's lying?
As recently as a few days ago.
Do you just live with it because you need him?
Well, will anybody really know?
Gina Haspel knows. Gina Haspel, the head of the CIA, she wasn't my first pick. As you know, she's a torture queen, actually told the President of the United States that there is no doubt in the intelligence community's collective conclusion that the Prince of Saudi Arabia ordered the killing and the dismemberment, the beheading of Jamal Khashoggi in the Saudi consulate. They have lied. They said he left. No, he didn't leave. They had a guy that looked like him make, a fake exit tape. Then they said, oh, it turned into a fight and the fight went bad. And remember, I kept saying, don't you hate it when you get into a fight and you fall on a bone saw? I hate when that happens. And then they said, well, the fight got out of control and he cut his own head off is what happened there. And then they said, well, okay, he was murdered, but we had nothing to do with it in the Saudi royal family. And now the CIA and the intelligence community collectively agrees that this Saudi prince is lying to the President of the United States. And the President of the United States simply sits there and goes, well, he said he didn't do it. He said it 5 times. He didn't do it. This is just like Kim Jong-un. I fell in love. He wrote nice letters about me and I fell in love with him. And now we know that he's building ballistic missiles. He's still got his nuclear program. We're able to see what goes on over there. And he says, you're going to see. It's going to be spectacular. You're going to see. It's going to be so good. It's going to be. Same thing with Vladimir Putin. He stood on a stage in Helsinki, Finland, and he told the entire world that Vladimir Putin denied very strongly and powerfully that he did not interfere in our elections. Meanwhile, Robert Mueller has indicted, Russian intelligence operatives and a Russian company that is run by Vladimir Putin's chef, because we all know that being a caterer can net you $1 billion in a country where the average income is $450 a month. Russia. He just cannot make himself call out autocrats. Duterte, he just calls up his friends and he says, get on your motorbikes and kill these drug addicts. And then they take them out and everybody, and Trump stands there and says, it's a kind of a good idea. He's very strong. He's very strong. And then he attacks our military, our service members. He tells you things are better for vets, that he did Veterans Choice, which he didn't do. That was done in 2014. He tells you that he's created somehow a great economy, which he had nothing to do with. In fact, in Trump country, specifically, those red counties, they're doing piss poor. They're not seeing any improvement. Things are literally getting worse. The cost of gas is going up. The cost of healthcare is skyrocketing. There's no big change in jobs pouring in. Maybe the rake industry will pour in. I don't know. But no matter what, and he denies that there was a blue wave. I mean, the House races, we haven't seen the House flip like this in 40 years. And now he's attacking the free press by saying they're fake. CNN, ABC, NBC, the failing New York Times, everybody is lying about him. Only he's telling the truth, and his people know that only he's telling the truth. This is so scary. This is so sick. This is so wrong. He trusts the Saudis more than he trusts our own intelligence operators. He trusts the Russians more than he trusts our own FBI, our own Robert Mueller, who was FBI director under a Republican president for 8 years and then was kept on by Barack Obama for, I think, two more years. And he just trashes everything that he is afraid of, like the truth. You have Tucker Carlson sitting on Fox News all day, every day, saying, no, CNN is fake news. It's all fake news. Doing this, the most racist program, inviting white supremacists on his show, not even making Sean Hannity doesn't even make believe that he's not biased anymore. We had a journalist killed. Now he takes away Brennan's security clearance and Jim Acosta's press pass because he doesn't like freedom. He doesn't like a strong military. He keeps trying to denigrate it, and certain people's service isn't up to Bone Spurs standards. It's a man who never served, never will serve. His kids will never serve. And yet 37 years, I hate him. Go to RandiRhodes.com for the whole thing and a podcast. Buy a stinking podcast.